Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
We tend to look at the Star Wars creations of George Lucas as gold, untouchable, and in many ways we're right. George Lucas's Star Wars was groundbreaking, so much that A New Hope won 11 Oscars in 1978. That was when it was just called Star Wars. But as amazing as these first 6 stories were, and still are, they aren't without issue. Nothing big, just enough to make us scratch our heads and say, why? If you've seen any of my videos at all, you'll know my favorite trilogy is the original Star Wars trilogy, with The Empire Strikes Back being at the top of that list. But my biggest issue with George Lucas's creation comes from that very same movie, in the form of Luke and Leia sharing some tongue.
Oh, here's a fun fact. You made out with your sister, man!
I mean, after you made them kiss, why not just make Luke's sister a whole other character? One whose mouth Luke's tongue wasn't in already. Okay, you get the point, but this video isn't about the incestual makeout session. It's just something I like to bring up from time to time. Okay, I like to bring it up a lot. Another issue we saw was the Death Star was built with a thermal exhaust port that connected to the nuclear reactor at the deep center of the moon-sized space station.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
But it seems in more recent years, some of those issues are being fixed. Okay, I don't want to use the word fixed. Let's just say explained better. For instance, the exhaust port on the moon-sized space station.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
All right, Obi-Wan, we get it. You can be quiet now. You have your own show. This one's mine. Anyways, where was I? Oh, fixing issues with the original Star Wars movies. They aren't bad issues, but they are definitely head-scratchers. But George Lucas laid a pretty solid foundation for these stories to be continued and built upon. And with the purchase of Lucasfilm by Disney, it seems these issues are being clarified a little more. Slowly, but surely. I don't really want to say they're being fixed, as I mentioned earlier, because the new explanations keep the original stories in place while giving a valid reason for it in the first place. Once again, I'll use the exhaust port as an example. The exhaust port in the Death Star leading to the nuclear power cell at the center of the space station.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
Okay, this is the last time I'm going to tell you, Obi-Wan. Stop. The exhaust port issue was resolved with a simple story called Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Okay, maybe the whole story wasn't so simple, but the explanation for the design flaw of the Death Star was. The lead engineer working on the project, Galen Erso, put the flaw in on purpose because he saw it being used as a weapon of mass destruction and wanted to exploit that flaw. Okay, that guy has nothing on Chief Palpatine when it comes to mass destruction. But this video isn't about that either. I mean, why make a video about a resolved issue? It's kind of pointless. Not really pointless. The Death Star issue was clarified and we all said, oh, okay. Boom, problem resolved. That brings me to another issue I've had with A New Hope. And trust me, I love A New Hope. Don't get me wrong. The issue is when Obi-Wan Kenobi told Luke about his father. He said,
a young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil.
That's not that big a deal, right? Wrong. It's always been a huge deal to me, and it was always one of those things, along with the kiss. But what this scene meant to me, after seeing the entire original trilogy, was that Obi-Wan Kenobi outright lied to Luke Skywalker. Not like a little white lie, but he made Darth Vader out to be this whole other person from Anakin Skywalker, a young Jedi named Darth Vader. Darth Vader was never a Jedi. Anakin Skywalker was. Anakin turned to the dark side and became Darth Vader once he became a Sith. But you all know this. Darth Vader was never a Jedi. For at least 30 years, I've been asking, why did he outright lie? Aren't the Jedi supposed to be all good, all wise? I never once considered a possibility that could be staring me in the face the whole time. Sure, Return of the Jedi brought Obi-Wan Kenobi out and he kind of explained part of the lie, but not the fact that he made Darth Vader a physically separate person, not just metaphorically. I've made other entire videos on this topic, so I don't want to go into it too deep about why I questioned it. Instead, I'll go ahead and link it in the description, because my reiteration of this topic is like beating a dead horse. Instead, I want to talk about how this issue was resolved for me in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And that series has explained that moment in A New Hope where it all makes sense to me now. Yes, it was blatantly obvious. I should have figured this out a long time ago without having to be shown it, tell me, don't show me, or show me, don't tell me, that kind of thing. So if you haven't seen the episode 6 finale of the first season or only season of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, please go away until you have. There are spoilers beyond this point. Save this video in your watch list for your play later, then come back to see what the hell I'm on about. For those of you still here, let's move forward. That moment in A New Hope is now explained in a way that I say, WTF, why didn't I just think of that? I mean, it was so obvious that I question my love of the Star Wars franchise now, or at least my knowledge of it. Not that I would ever not love it, just, you know what I mean. I'm disappointed in myself for not figuring it out sooner on my own. It makes freaking sense. Jesus. I'm going to explain it as it's laid out in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, because hopefully all of you have seen it. During the final battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, Obi-Wan cracks the mask of his former bestie. Beneath, we see a small portion of Anakin Skywalker's face, burnt up, a little charred, some missing eyebrows and whatnot. Similar to the final duel between Darth Vader and Ahsoka Tano in Star Wars Rebels, but I'll get into that another video. But we see Anakin's face with the yellow Sith eyes. Obi-Wan apologizes to Anakin for everything. He even says his name a couple times, Anakin. Then you see Anakin's face as he looks at Obi-Wan from beneath his brow. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. In other words, apology accepted, Captain Nita, but unnecessary. He's telling Obi-Wan that he didn't cause this. Obi-Wan wasn't the cause of Darth Vader coming to light, or dark, we should say. The dark side in him was responsible for this. Then Obi-Wan Kenobi responds, then my friend is truly dead. Pretty simple stuff. Darth Vader killed Anakin, and now Obi-Wan has come to terms with it. But that's not all. There's still the face that Obi-Wan Kenobi physically separated Anakin Skywalker from Darth Vader. Not just metaphorically, like I mentioned before, meaning he made Darth Vader into an entirely separate physical person. He even recalled him as being a Jedi. Why? Well, that explanation is a little trickier. From the beginning of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, we see a broken man. Exactly that broken man that Ewan McGregor had told us about, even before the show aired. He's lost touch with the Force and holds on to a lot of regret. The biggest is what transpired between him and Anakin Skywalker when they were younger. It shows that even though Jedi weren't supposed to have attachments, and Obi-Wan Kenobi being one of the best Jedi of his generation, he still had his own attachments, and that attachment was Anakin Skywalker. His love for his Padawan, who was more like a brother than a student. Anakin Skywalker was Obi-Wan Kenobi's attachment. When he learned that Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker had lived, a race of emotions flooded the once proud Jedi Master. There may have even been a little hope that he could bring Anakin Skywalker back from the dark place that he was holding him down. That is, until he saw him. The first time Obi-Wan Kenobi saw Anakin Skywalker, there was nothing resembling his best friend. Instead, he was covered head to toe in armor and life support. Not only his appearance was different, but Darth Vader showed he wasn't the little boy that Obi-Wan Kenobi had trained by walking through the streets and killing innocent people. Not just the men, but the women and children too. A little poetic, don't you think? Now, Obi-Wan Kenobi is in fear. He felt that fear fully when they met for the first time, and Darth Vader tortured his old master. He had no remorse, no regret, and no sympathy for what he was doing to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yet, Obi-Wan held on to hope. After all, that's a huge theme in Star Wars from the very beginning. Hope, when there seems to be none. As he prepared for their second confrontation, Obi-Wan spoke aloud, "Whether he dies or I die, this ends today," as he was saying to an invisible Qui-Gon Jinn. But deep down, he held on to that hope that he could restore his former friend and brother. But when they met, that hope was destroyed. He wanted to save Anakin Skywalker, but Darth Vader had no problem with eliminating Obi-Wan Kenobi. When Obi-Wan said that my friend is truly dead, that hope was gone. In Obi-Wan Kenobi's mind, Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker had become two physically separate people, as if they could stand side by side if Anakin Skywalker were alive, after Darth Vader had obviously killed him. The half-masked, more machine than man that stood beaten before him was only Darth Vader, the pupil of Obi-Wan Kenobi's who turned to evil. Darth Vader had betrayed and murdered Anakin Skywalker. This is Gerald from Star Wars Fanatic signing off, wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't done so, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And remember, this is the way, the only way.